Another Adrian Plass story. Sadly, this one dates not only him, but also me. But here goes. I once made the mistake of telling one of my children how I went about persuading my parents to buy me a particular book that I wanted. I explained that I had read all of a certain series of books by Enid Blyton, that terrible writer whose books are mysteriously enjoyed by generation after generation of children who stubbornly refuse not to like them. And that I now desperately wanted the latest in the series, a book entitled The River of Adventure. Neither Christmas nor my birthday were in sight, and as my parents were not very well off, I was well aware that 7 and 6pence, see what I mean? 7 and 6pence was far more money than they would care to part with, especially as the book was bound to appear in the library eventually anyway. But I was merciless. I embarked on a callous long-term campaign that simply involved saying the words, River of Adventure, River of Adventure, over and over again, the theory being that eventually my parents would crack under the pressure and I would get my book. River Adventure, River of Adventure, River of Adventure, River of Adventure, River of Adventure. Those were the words that began to drive my mother and father mad over the weeks that followed. I was as stubborn at the age of 10 as I sometimes can be now, and I wanted that book. I was determined to go on repeating the phrase until my mission was accomplished. And nothing was going to stop me. Looking back, I find it interesting to reflect on the stages that my poor parents went through in their response to this ploy. They were mildly amused. Looking back, I find it interesting to reflect on the stages that my poor parents went through in their response to this ploy. They were mildly amused at first, perhaps thinking my insistence rather touching, but that phase soon passed. Their amusement turned swiftly to irritation as they discovered that their every waking hour in my presence was filled with the same phrase, accompanying all else that happened, like the bass line of a track being played on someone else's hi-fi in the next room. Irritation was followed by downright anger and threats, all of which failed to stem or even briefly interrupt my flow, the content of which had by now resolved itself into a sort of condensed version of the original River Adventure, River Adventure, River Adventure, River Adventure, River Adventure. They never really stood a chance, did they? But they did try everything. They ignored me. I went on saying it. They talked reasonably to me. I went on saying it. They made promises for the distant future. I went on saying it. They told me in serious end of our tethered tones that enough was enough. I went on saying it. River Adventure, River Adventure, River Adventure, River Adventure, River Adventure. Finally, wild-eyed, haggard and defeated, they brought me the book. It was one of the few victories in a not very victorious childhood. When, some years ago, I told one of my sons this story, he listened with enormous interest, then gazed speculatively at me for a moment and began, Nintendo, 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 Nintendo. So, as this Christmas thought comes, my heart goes out to the modern parent who is bombarded not just by any child, but by every advert in between, every program that tells you this gift or that gift is the must-have this season, and it's only $99.99. May I remind you to remind them exactly what is the real meaning of Christmas. Good luck. Bye.